Sophia Parker was a girl who had everything. She was the only daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city, living in a grand mansion with more luxury than most people could dream of. Her father, Richard Parker, was a highly respected businessman, and his connections were some of the most influential in the world. Sophia had never wanted for anything: designer clothes, the latest gadgets, lavish vacations, you name it. Life was perfect for her, or at least that's how she saw it. But despite her privileged life, Sophia had a nasty attitude. She was spoiled, self-centered, and had little regard for anyone outside her social circle. Her sense of entitlement was evident in every conversation, and she often treated people with disdain, particularly those she considered beneath her. One evening, Richard invited one of his old friends to their home for dinner, Jacob Adams. Jacob was a man in his late 50s, dressed in simple clothes, but there was something about him that intrigued Sophia. Her father always spoke highly of Jacob, calling him a true hero. But to Sophia he looked like just another average Joe with little to offer in the way of conversation or social standing. As the evening went on, the two men spoke fondly of the past, of their younger days, their shared experiences, and how they had helped each other through thick and thin. Sophia, on the other hand, found herself growing increasingly bored. She sat at the table, scrolling through her phone, barely engaging in the conversation. "Dad, can you please ask him to stop talking about those ancient stories?" she finally interjected, her voice dripping with annoyance. "I mean, who even cares about what happened 30 years ago?" Richard gave her a stern look, but Sophia wasn't bothered. "It's just so pointless, you know. I've got a ton of things to do, friends to see, parties to attend. Can we not waste our time on these old stories?" Jacob, who had been quietly listening, raised an eyebrow at her words. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't say anything. Richard, on the other hand, was visibly uncomfortable, his face reddening. "Sophia, that's enough," Richard said firmly. "You should respect our guests. Jacob is a very important person to me." Sophia scoffed. "Important to you? Please, Dad, the guy doesn't even look like he's been anywhere exciting." Jacob remained silent, but the expression on his face changed. There was a quiet sadness in his eyes, something that Sophia didn't notice. She was too busy with her own little world, too entitled to understand the weight of what was going on. After a few more uncomfortable moments, the dinner ended, and Jacob said his goodbyes. As he left, Sophia couldn't help but continue her criticism. "Honestly, Dad, who lets someone like that into our home?" she muttered. "He's not even trying to fit in with us. What's he even doing with his life?" Richard, looking disappointed but too tired to argue, simply shook his head. "Sophia, you have no idea who Jacob really is. You don't understand." Sophia shrugged it off, confident that she was right. She went to bed that night with no more thought about Jacob or the dinner. The next few days passed in a blur of shopping, social events, and parties, and she forgot all about the night Jacob had come over. Then, one afternoon, the unthinkable happened. Sophia was driving home from a shopping spree when a car, speeding around a corner, lost control and crashed into her vehicle. The impact was devastating. Her car was thrown off the road and rolled several times before coming to a halt in a ditch. In a daze, Sophia struggled to unbuckle her seatbelt, but the pain was unbearable, and her vision blurred. She tried to move, but couldn't. It felt like hours before the sound of sirens reached her ears. The paramedics arrived, pulling her from the wreckage and rushing her to the hospital. Sophia's mind was hazy, and she could barely remember the events that followed, but the only thing she was sure of was the pain. It was intense, and she was terrified. Her father rushed to the hospital as soon as he was notified, and he stayed by her side. But there was something in his eyes that she hadn't seen before: fear. After a long surgery and several tense hours, Sophia was finally stable. Her father sat by her bedside, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, and it was then that he spoke the words she never expected to hear. "Sophia, you don't know this, but Jacob saved your life," he said quietly, his voice heavy with emotion. Sophia blinked in confusion. "Jacob? What do you mean? He wasn't even around." "He was the one who saw the accident happen," Richard continued. "He was driving right behind you when the car lost control. He was the first one to reach your vehicle. He pulled you out even though the car was smoking and dangerous. He kept you conscious and calm until the paramedics arrived. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't have made it." Sophia's heart sank. The reality of what her father was saying hit her like a ton of bricks. She had insulted Jacob, the very man who had risked his own life to save hers, the man she had dismissed so carelessly. The realization was overwhelming. I didn't know," she whispered, feeling the weight of her words from the other night come crashing down on her. The girl who had everything had been saved by the person she had looked down upon, the person she had mocked and criticized. Her father's voice softened. "Jacob doesn't care about your wealth or your status. He never did. He did it because it was the right thing to do." Sophia lay in the hospital bed, her mind spinning. How could she have been so blind? In her pursuit of status, she had failed to recognize the true value of people, the ones who had real integrity, kindness, and courage. Jacob wasn't a man of wealth, but he was a man of character. And now she had to live with the fact that her arrogance had almost cost her her life. The next day, Sophia asked her father for Jacob's contact information. When she finally reached him, she spoke from the heart. "I'm so sorry for how I treated you," she said, her voice filled with regret. "I never should have insulted you. You saved my life, and I didn't even realize what kind of person you were. I was wrong." Jacob, on the other end of the line, was quiet for a moment before responding with a calm, understanding tone. "It's okay, Sophia. I never did what I did for recognition. I did it because you needed help, and sometimes people need to learn the hard way." Sophia felt a lump in her throat. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," Jacob said. "Just remember, kindness and character are more important than wealth. I think you're learning that now." This story is a powerful reminder of the importance of humility and the danger of taking people for granted. Sophia's journey from arrogance to gratitude shows that sometimes we don't truly understand the value of people until we find ourselves in a crisis. It's a call to never judge others based on their status or appearance, and to remember that real worth lies in one's character, not in material wealth.